going to Tampa allowed Emmanuel to stretch out gradually from the shorter distance to a little bit of a longer distance while getting 2 turns. Where if he ran the same distance at Gulfstream, it would have just been 1 turn. Paco was fighting for that same hole as Tyler Gaffleone on the horse for Safi Joseph, and unfortunately, the hole closes up. They kind of incidental bump contact, which then kind of leads to a chain reaction of dominoes.
So you got this Emmanuel getting cut off early, gets cut off late. That's a really good reason why you need to stick with them at least one more race.
So in simplifications matter, okay, break, and he made the lead, and you go about your business, and you're a winner. Now you fast forward to the Holy Bull. He's supposed to be forwardly placed, but he breaks slow. You miss the break. You encounter some traffic trouble, things that are out of your control. And now it's, all right, what's plan B? Well, plan B is we got to figure out a way to win this race. And it's not like you can call timeout in the NBA. The Buyers have made no sense to me for the last few years. I would love to have Andy Byer on the show with us one day, and he can try and explain to us what it is, because they make no sense. I thought Byer was about speed, and it turns out that it's not, because the fastest horse doesn't get the fastest time anymore. Sano and the word recovery are not often used in the same sentence. Antonio is a guy who likes to run his horses. Okay. So I would expect under almost all circumstances, we will see Simplification back in the Florida Derby. The fact that he needs no points means nothing to Antonio Sano. Antonio Sano would love to win the Florida Derby. It's a grade 1 in his backyard on his home track. Oh, yeah. And go into the Kentucky Derby as one of the post-time favorites. The one thing left on his bucket list for Steve Asmussen is to win the Kentucky Derby. He's come close before. He thought he's had the winner before. He was really, really excited about Midnight Bourbon last year. Came up a little short, but he has a couple of live shots here with Morello and obviously Epicenter, who's enjoyed a prosperous winner at Fairgrounds. Where he'll take on Messier.
Again, yes, rematch.
And so he'll take on Messier. And the thing with Messier is going to be ... Who will be the trainer of Messier on April 2nd? You spin the wheel, where it stops, nobody knows.
Overseas and everything, it'd be nice if you could actually, I don't know, maybe is there a way to hook up like some sort of visual outdoors so we can actually see that you're there? Because you could say you're there, but we don't know unless you actually look. I see something that says Dubai in the background, and there's got lights, and it's
You want me to do the podcast live next to a camel?
That might work. All right, thanks for tuning in to more Horse Talk, Thoroughbred style, on Prime Sports Network. Chad Summers, Thoroughbred trainer, joining us, as usual, for his Monday spot. Things aren't going too well because of?
There's a quarantine in place in Parks. So
but what?
The land of Pennsylvania has a horse has a herpes positive. And unfortunately, they're going to be quarantined for 2 weeks. So no horses can ship out of Parks for the next 2 weeks. And anyone that ships in can't leave. So you end up basically imprisoning yourself there for 2 weeks. So it's a very difficult situation for people who aren't stable there to run. And so you'll see a lot of scratches. There's, big stake races tomorrow. In fact, not only was my Philly Champagne Poetry that I own with your good friend Jonathan Hardoon, but also the winner of the Jerome earlier in the year for Kelly Breen, Kvarsier, was also supposed to be there in the undercard race as well. So some interesting news. You're not going to see any horses from Park shipping out to any of these other tracks, whether it be nearby Laurel or Aqueduct in the
2 weeks.
Future as well. So there was a text chain that went out earlier that no entries will be accepted from Parks horses for any of those racetracks.
So What does that mean? Does that mean that you have to sit there with? Well, you can leave, but the horse is basically you're just waiting to find out whether or not there's a way to put a race together with your horse.
So I mean, we kind of rolled the dice a little bit. There were other races we could have run in on Saturday, be it at Gulfstream and the Devona Dale that Kathleen O was very impressive in, as she now gets the points needed to go to the Kentucky Oaks. Up here in New York, we had uh, the Busher Stakes, $250,000, 50 points to the winner, which went to Vente Valentine, who got the job done in her first start of a 3-year-old year. So there were other opportunities to go forward. We kind of took the what does Yogi Berra say, right? If there's a fork in the road, take it. So we were going for a little bit of a different path, going down to Parks, and unfortunately, it was after the other races. So now you kind of get stuck in no man's land. So just kind of regroup. It's almost like an extended bye week, and we'll run April 2nd in Turfway Park.
That's the goal right now. April 2nd, Turfway.
April 2nd will be the next start. Yeah.
And that's like the last start before
That's your
hopefully
last
the
chance for
Oaks.
points. Yeah, those are your chance to get points. Once if you're first, second, maybe third, you get points to qualify for the Kentucky Oaks.
John and I were we were doing a race. Yeah, this is it. Okay, and it's interesting. It's going to be the first race that we're going to talk about, the Fountain of Youth. So we were going over the race, and John John was a little confused with Emmanuel, with Todd Pletcher's decision to go to Tampa for the horse's second start. Like he wasn't sure why he didn't just stay at Gulfstream, but he brought that up, and look, it doesn't mean that's the reason Emmanuel lost, but he just was confused about that. Just little unusual. So first reason I bring that up is because I want to ask you. We're just talking about deciding which racetrack to go to and all that. So what do you think goes in? Well, what goes into the thought process then of someone like Todd Pletcher when he takes his horse out of maybe the comfort zone of Gulfstream Park to go to Tampa when he knows he's going to come back anyway to Gulfstream Park to race in the Fountain of Youth. Why not just stay at Gulfstream Park for the first three races?
So there's a few points. One is kind of the way that tracks are made. Okay, they have different setups and different distances, or one turn and two turns and things of that nature. Um, Going to Tampa allowed Emmanuel to stretch out gradually from the shorter distance to a little bit of a longer distance while getting two turns. Where if he ran the same distance at Gulfstream, it would have just been one turn.
Okay.
So the concept was you want to get a two-turn race into your horse, as the Kentucky Derby will be two-turn race. It's different on horses as far as switching leads and things of that nature that they have to learn. Look, we ask these horses a lot to overcome from when they're babies to when they're the first Saturday in May, whether they're officially 3 years old or not. That's when the race is. So you're trying to teach them while running in these races. And that's basically Todd Pletcher used the Tampa race as a teaching moment to get the horse more comfortable going around two turns. He's also used this in the past, right? So sometimes you see people are creatures of habit. And it's not only with horse racing. You hear about this all the time in football and things like that. Or a golfer might have, a rabbit's foot in a left pocket or whatever. Obviously, the movie Tin Cup comes to mind. But Todd Pletcher did this last time with Always Dreaming. Always Dreaming actually ran in Tampa before coming back to Gulfstream for the Florida Derby, and then he took that onto Kentucky and win the Kentucky Derby. So, it's a strategy that worked for him in the past. And look, you want to be able to ship your horse. The horse is stabled at Palm Beach Downs. Palm Beach Downs is an hour trip to Gulfstream, 45 minutes. Going down to Tampa is a 3-hour trip. So it gives you a chance to, again, if it's a good horse, at some point you're going to have to get on a van and you're going to have to show up. And that was kind of another thing for Emmanuel to say, hey, you know what? I can ship and I can win. Unfortunately, you fast forward now to the Fountain of Youth, which we can talk about, and it didn't work out. And it didn't work out because he regressed on the sheets, which obviously his number will come back slower. He didn't lose the race because he's not good enough. He lost the race because he kind of broke in a precarious spot and ended up in no man's land. And when you're in a full field, and everybody's trying to win the race. Everybody's doing everything they can to put themselves in best position. These jockeys are riding this race from start to finish. And unfortunately, Luis Saez and Emmanuel got hung out very, very wide going into the first turn, where it's never really able to save ground. And really, Louis and Emmanuel started what ended up being the chain reaction, where unfortunately the two horses went down in High Oak and Galt, because Louis was riding in such a way that everything was tight quarters. Okay, everybody's tight quarters, and you see this sometimes in the Olympics. You see in the Olympics where horses or in that case, people are trying to get position, right? Or even in the New York City Marathon, right, where everybody's trying to get over, and in that situation,
So he got
Paco
the
Lopez,
horse got beat to the position ahead of him, correct? He
right?
didn't
So
get there
Emmanuel
before
got
the
beat
other
in
horses
the
did.
original position and was never able to kind of get over, save any ground, get in the comfort zone, did most of the dirty work, and then ended up kind of coming up a little short. So we'll start with Emmanuel. If you're a fan of Emmanuel, if you played him in your future wagers, you have, I think, I don't know, 5 points or 2 points or whatever it is that you got for the fourth place finish, since he got nailed on the wire for third. I wouldn't give up on him. A lot of people, he's gonna get tossed off their tickets, or today's not good enough. I wanted to have him higher on our poll. I dropped him down to 10 for the same reason why Cyberknife on the first week was at number 9. You're allowed that one kind of mulligan, but now when you're getting your mulligans this late in the year, this late in the season, to try and qualify for the Derby, that's it. So that next race for Emmanuel,
Got to win.
which will more than likely be the Florida Derby, right? Because Todd's kind of starting to surround his races and have ideas and everything else. Could see him in the Arkansas Derby, maybe, but right now, let's say he goes to the Florida Derby. He's in a situation where he needs to win, in order to move on. Maybe run second, but he needs to win. And I think he'll grow from this. He'll learn from this. I think he'll break better next time, and I think he'll kind of work out a better trip. So Emmanuel will stay on the list. As we continue in the Fountain of Youth race, obviously the thing that's on everybody's mind was, unfortunately, the two horses clipping heels and going down. And, there's a lot of people out there that are saying Paco Lopez, who rode the eventual second place finisher in due time for Kelly Breen, kind of caused it. I have the feeling where it's a horse race where everybody's going for the tightest of windows, the tightest of holes, and Paco was fighting for that same hole as Tyler Gaffleone on the horse for Safi Joseph, and unfortunately, the hole closes up. They kind of incidental bump contact, which then kind of leads to a chain reaction of dominoes into High Oaks, who then clips heels with the horse in front of him, causing him to lose his balance. And unfortunately, Joel Rosario couldn't get out of the way. He was right behind in Galt, getting ready to make a typical Joel Rosario kind of sweeping move.
Yes.
And he unfortunately kind of got wrapped up in it. Well, thankfully, both horses came back. They're fine. The riders are a little banged up, but in speaking to both of their agents, I can safely say that they'll be okay. They might be out a couple of days. I think Junior will come back on Wednesday or Thursday. Joel, hopefully later on at the end of the week. But I mean, look, these are tough guys. I and girls. I don't think the general population gives these jockeys enough credit for what they do. I say it over and over again. We're the only sport that has an ambulance following you around the track while you do your job. Can you imagine, Greg? While we're recording this podcast, behind you, you got you got two people in an ambulance that are just waiting for you to something go wrong or whatever to come pick you up. So it's something that's always on your mind. You're going 38, 40 miles an hour on these horses. They're 1,200 pounds, and you're trying to win, as are they. And so it's just one of those things. It was an unfortunate situation, and fortunately, everybody's okay.
Okay, now I'm gonna play the stretch drive here right after the incident and simplification.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things to take away from this thing here. So you'll see Simplification, who's even wider than Emmanuel, and he grinds it out. But when the horses go down, there's that 1 second where most jockeys are sitting there and they're like what the heck,
Sure.
what just happened, right? My comrades have just kind of fallen down right next to me. Are they okay? Are the horses okay? Where are the horses? And it was at such a point in the race where you kind of lose focus of everything that's going on. And so to me, the stretch drive itself wasn't really a true stretch drive, because Simplification went about his business and he ran really well, and he kind of made amends for the traffic and the trouble that he got into last time in the Holy Bull. But other than maybe in due time, where Paco Lopez just, I mean, he's a robot and he'll just ride. He'll never check behind him to see what happened. He's a renegade. He's going to ride all the way to the wire. He was able to kind of earn second, and I do think that the incident kind of spooked Emmanuel a little bit. Again, only 2 career starts, so was a little bit behind some of these others in experience, and I think that probably cost him second or third.
Well, the other thing I'm
Overall.
noticing here, Chad, is that
yeah,
as just as they're coming down the stretch right after the incident, once again, Emmanuel gets beat for the position by another horse. And that was Simplification. Yeah. Beat him to the inside, cut him off a little bit, and Emmanuel had to move to the outside. So you got this Emmanuel getting cut off early, gets cut off late. That's a really good reason why you need to stick with them at least one more race.
Well, it's a learning moment, right? And again, on a horse that's only his 3rd career start, you can jump off the train or you can stay aboard, right? I'm on the manner that I think the horse has a world of ability, as does, I believe, the whole Top Fletcher barn. So I'm not going to give up on him yet. But this next race becomes ultra crucial.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And you have to you have to kind of move forward with that.
Okay, now and as far as Simplification is concerned, though, Antonio Sano, not a familiar name.
So he's a horse he's a guy you might remember a few years ago. He was on the Derby trail and ran in the Derby with a horse named Gunnavera.
Remember that? Yes.
Gunnavera ended up making about $5 million. He was kind of like always a bridesmaid, never a bride. Did win the Florida Derby though, and one of the highlights of my career was actually being there that day and watching him run down the length of the stretch with his horse. And there's a YouTube video of it somewhere. And he's just so excited. He's basically running alongside his horse at top speed. And he's not a young guy at top speed, going into to victory. He's a guy from Venezuela who was kidnapped twice when he was a younger guy. A true kind of American, dream story. And has lived a storybook since then. Gunnavera kind of put him on the map. He's a South Florida stalwart where he'll have 75, 80 horses, and he's always amongst the leading trainers during the summer meeting, not when when it's kind of a little bit of an easier thing. But Chino, his assistant's been with him from the beginning, does a great job. His son, Antonio Sano Jr., who's in vet school at the University of Florida, has been around basically the whole time since Antonio's been training. A hardworking group of people who deserve to have a nice horse. And this is a nice horse for an owner in Tammy Bobo, who is best known in kind of the thoroughbred circle as a seller. She's always a seller. She would sell yearlings to 2-year-olds, 1-year-olds to 2-year-olds, babies to 1-year-olds. She's a mover and a shaker and buys and sells. And for whatever reason on this horse, she said, no, I'm going to keep this one. And as the horse won and as he ran well, the offers came in. And almost every single time in the past, she sold. She sold. And for whatever reason, she said, I'm keeping this horse. This one's the one. And it's that belief that she had and the confidence in Antonio Sano that has kind of taken us here. He's a horse who's had a couple of bad trips. And, the reason he wasn't on a top 10 list before was he ran well in the Holy Bull. He was second, ran a really good race, made up a lot of ground behind Guadabario. Yes. But he had broke slow, and it wasn't the first time that he had traffic. And my concern was always, when you're in the Kentucky Derby, you can't have a straw on your path. Everything needs to go perfect. And this horse, things always seem to not go perfect.
Well, interestingly enough, if I I'm looking at he had the 2 wins previous. Mm-hmm. He had the lead the race prior to the Holy Bull, it was basically wire to wire.
Yeah.
And then the
Yeah.
second race had the lead for most of the second half of the race. But the Holy Bull and then in the Fountain of Youth, it was more of a come from behind kind of stalking closer kind of type of mentality. So what's up with that? Is that when you're thinking about your horse, how do you determine what's the strategy sometimes about, hey, we're going to have a horse that's going to be a closer. We're going to have a horse that's going to, go out there and try to go wire to wire. Because I'm kind of confused by how they're kind of running here. It's almost like it depends on what's going on in the race.
Well, they'll tell you, I mean, you can work horses in the morning time by themselves, in company, 3 horses, 4 horses, but it's not the same thing as going in the gate for a race for the first time. Now, you might know, hey, my horse is pretty fast coming out of the gate, right? When you practice coming out of the gate, because not all the time are you going to practice coming out of the gate. Sometimes you're going to work just from the pole or whatever. You're not always going to work out from the
Okay.
gate like in a race civilization. So what happens is you say, okay, for example, you take Simplification. Man, this horse is fast. He's fast. He worked out of the gate and he blew the doors off my other horses. Now my other horses might be slow because again, you're not when more times than not when you're working horses out of the gate to find out what they are, you're working with your own. You're not working with hey Todd Pletcher. Hey, I want to see how fast my horse is for practice.
It's
why
like
don't you come
practicing.
on
It's like when you practice in football. And you don't realize how good or how tough that team is until you actually get onto the field and line up against them for the first series.
Like you can sit there and you're in practice in football and your offense is much better than your defense.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh man, we're gonna crush it. And then you realize, wait a second, our offense is okay, but man, our defense is terrible. Yeah. Right? I know there's a story that Pat McAfee likes to say. He was like the scout team quarterback on the Colts. And so he was the scout team quarterback. And they were facing their number 1 defense, and he was acting like he was the guy on this Drew Brees on the Saints. And he goes, man, I threw 18 touchdowns to my tight end, and I'm a punter. Yeah. So what happened in the game? They got beat, 45-0 or whatever the case may be. So I think, to me, that's a situation of you don't know until you know.
Yeah.
And what happens is when they run for the first time, you're instructed. Hopefully the jockey has ridden the horse once or twice before to kind of get a feel for him. And you're telling the jockey, hey, listen, he's fast out of the gate. Let him break and see what happens. So in Simplification's matter, okay, break, and he made the lead, and you go about your business, and you're a winner. Now you fast forward to the Holy Bull. He's supposed to be forwardly placed, but he breaks slow. You miss the break. You encounter some traffic trouble, things that are out of your control. And now it's, all right, what's plan B? Well, plan B is we got to figure out a way to win this race. And it's not like you can call timeout in the NBA and we'll kind of reset and we'll see where we're at. Split-second decisions. And that's what makes the top jockeys so good. And look, Javier Castellano did a good job. He rode this horse before. The switch to Jose Ortiz, though, who rode Simplification the other day, got a chance to work him and really get to kind of know him a little bit. And they're teaching the horse, hey, listen, it's okay. You don't have to make the lead. You can still.
Isn't that a really good thing when you have a horse that's versatile like that?
Yes. No, it's so important. It's so important. Because it gives you options.
Yes.
There are horses that are speed dependent. There are horses who are closers. And, as a handicapper, you're looking at the race and you say, man, there's not a lot of speed in this race. My horse is coming from far behind.
Sure.
I don't know that I can close and win. So, you always hear that, victim of circumstances and whatever. But it's very difficult to sit there and be like, man, I probably can't win this race. And so, if you have that versatility and you have enough tactical speed, hopefully, to put you in a good spot early on, that's the dream horse. Those are the horses that you want to own.
Okay, so by the way, the sheets now, and I'm not sure, do you know what the number is? For Simplification?
No, I don't know Simplification, no.
So the last 3 races, we're going from a 23, a 10, and an 8. So I'd be very interested to find out if we have at least a 7 in this race.
That final time was not very fast. I know he got a good buyer.
That was a crazy race, yeah.
The buyers have made no sense to me for the last few years. I would love to have Andy Byer on the show with us one day, and he can try and explain to us what it is, because they make no sense. I thought Byer was about speed, and it turns out that it's not, because the fastest horse doesn't get the fastest time anymore. So there's a lot of mind-boggling things. The sheets, I think, are far more reliable in how they break things down. So it will be interesting to see. I can't see that horse running 8 though on the sheets, because his time just was so much kind of significantly slower. We've seen some fast races. I mean, I think you harken back to, I mean, Epicenter had a fast number. California, there's been a few fast numbers. I just don't necessarily see that happening um, in this race. But you know what? If the horse were to take a move back here, and I'm sure you'll talk to Jonathan about this
I'm
on the show
actually
on Friday.
texting him right now to see if I can get a number.
But what happens is I wouldn't mind taking a step back here because this is kind of like a reset. You don't have to always be moving forward right now. Like if he were to run an 8 and then come back with a 7 and then run again in the Florida Derby in 4 weeks and then again in the Derby, it's a lot of races kind of on top of each other. And the one thing that if you run a big number on the sheets, sometimes you want to get a little bit more time for recovery. And Antonio
Yes.
Sano and the word recovery are not often used in the same sentence. Antonio is a guy who likes to run his horses.
Okay.
So I would expect, under almost all circumstances, we will see Simplification back in the Florida Derby. The fact that he needs no points means nothing to Antonio Sano. Antonio Sano would love to win the Florida Derby. It's a grade 1 in his backyard on his home track.
Oh, yeah.
And go into the Kentucky Derby as one of the post-time favorites. So I would look to see Simplification back in the Florida Derby as well.
All right. Too early, says John, for the sheets on Simplification on the Fountain of Youth. Okay, so we're going to move ahead to the Gotham. And what we're going to see here out of Morello, and Morello, by the way, was your biggest forward move from 10th. And that was the first time Morello was in your rankings, was last week. So he moved from 10th to 5th with a very impressive win in the Gotham. So I'm gonna play the stretch drive here, and we're gonna talk about it because what I noticed, I mean, looked like Morello was doing well. Obviously, that's Lascano doing an excellent job stalking Dean's List, and then perfect trip when it was time for Morello to kick it into gear. Morello just went right by Dean's List and picked up the victory. The first 2 races, the numbers were 15 and then 9. So very impressive Steve Asmussen win with Morello in the Gotham.
Yeah, and this horse is going to take a step back on the sheet number as well. The final time wasn't very fast, but how he did it was impressive. The reason he made the list last week was, once the filly we found out was going to head for the Kentucky Oaks instead of the Derby, it kind of opened up a spot. And look, this was the logical winner. I mean, Jonathan, I think, was all over it on the preview show on Friday that he was going to be the one to beat, and he was. Look, good horses and tactical horses, we talked before about kind of being able to put yourself in that position. They always seem to work out good trips, right? So they talk about, he had the perfect trip. Well, sometimes if you're a good horse, you get the good trip because you're able to put yourself in that position.
Yes.
And look, Jose Lozcano is a guy who's done it before. He knows, where to be in big races. And I do like the fact here that he didn't have to work that hard. So while was the field behind him that good? Look, it had its kind of question marks going into it. Todd Pletcher's going to run second and third, not necessarily with his, top tier horses. I like the fact that he proved that he can get a little bit of a further distance, and he has something left when he goes a mile and 1/8 in the Wood Memorial, where he is going to face some of Todd Pletcher's best horses, including a horse like Mo Donegal, and maybe a horse we haven't heard from in a while in Command Performance, who we should see Saturday in a maiden race at Tampa, and then maybe go on to the Wood. So you're going to see a much deeper field in the Wood. Morello's going to have to step up. He's not going to be even money in the Wood, even off the heels of this big effort. But look, all credit to Toby Sheed, Steve Asmussen's assistant over here in New York. This horse has been in New York with Toby the entire winter. It's not easy to train here in the wintertime with the weather conditions that we have on a day-to-day basis. And he's done a great job of kind of managing this horse along the way. And Steve has such a great program. He's the all-time winningest trainer in history. So together, they've done a great job with this horse. The one thing left on his bucket list for Steve Asmussen is to win the Kentucky Derby. He's come close before. He thought he's had the winner before. He was really, really excited about Midnight Bourbon last year. Came up a little short, but he has a couple of live shots here with Morello and obviously Epicenter, who's enjoyed a prosperous winner at Fairgrounds.
Okay, so we asked for it and we got it. Simplification not only went back, but went back to 10 and a quarter.
Okay,
So
not too bad though.
simplification went from an 8 to a 10. So a couple, 2 and a quarter backwards after a 23-10-8. And then Morello got Morello's sheet number 2. Morello was, again, as I mentioned, was 15-9 when Morello went back to a 12.
Right. And that's and look, that's what you're gonna see at this stage. And the one thing that the sheets, the one thing that the sheets don't do, which is why you kind of have to watch the replays as well, is they're looking at the race, they're looking at the trip, they're looking at everything else. But if you win under wraps, if you win geared down, and you're much the best, I wish that they would be able to have a place on the sheets that say like MTB, right? Just much the best. So it's a 12, but it really could have been faster. I mean, look, Morello could have gone a second faster in the race, but he didn't have to. He did what he had to do on the day. And so I put a 12 there with a little bit of a star saying, you know what, it could have been a faster number. He wasn't all out. And I would look forward. I would truly anticipate that number moving forward in the wood. But he is going to face, the toughest competition he's ever had going into the wood. And it's interesting. The ownership group on Morello, they said they're a bunch of guys from Saratoga, and they'd rather have a canoe, meaning the Travers in Saratoga, than the Kentucky Derby Trophy. Now they can say that now until they're holding the Kentucky Derby Trophy, and then I'll call BS on them. But look, this is a horse with a promising future. How far he'll go, he's giving every indication that he'll go further. Like the fact that he was able to kind of sit off it a little bit. He didn't have to go wire to wire because, as we'll talk about here in a second, in California, there is a lot of speed right now signed up for the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, there's no reason to show highlights of the San Felipe because Forbidden Kingdom, whenever you have those, it's interesting because if a horse is leading by that much, it's like a half a race to go. The first thing that pops into your head is, I mean, that's just he's going too fast. But then when you realize, but this is the favorite of the race, then something is you're seeing something pretty dominating, and that's exactly what happened in that race. Was that more of a? And by the way, not only did he dominate the race, but he dominated it with Bob Baffert's doppelganger in there. And so far, we haven't talked about Baffert yet. So 30 minutes in, we haven't mentioned his name yet. So far, no good for Bob Baffert's horses.
No,
it's early, but
a disappointing couple of weeks with Newgrange disappointing in the Southwest or in the Rebel, and then you had obviously the horse over here, Rockefeller in the Gotham,
right.
was no good.
Yep.
And then you had the two horses in the San Felipe. And Doppelganger, look, Doppelganger actually ran well. He finished second. He made up some ground there at the end. But I kind of remember back a few years ago in the NBA, they had an all-star game, and it was Team USA versus the world. And it just seems like when you run in California, it's Bob Baffert versus the world.
Yeah.
Right? So Bob Baffert had two horses in the race, but the world, who everybody else is kind of rooting for, right? Bob Baffert has his his loyalists and his followers and his flock and everything else, his entourage. And then everybody else is kind of rooting for Bob Baffert to get beat. And so a guy like Richard Mandela, who has been around for so long and has worked with so many nice horses over the years. And look, he had one of the favorites in this race just a few years ago in Omaha Beach and had to scratch, I think it was 3 days before the race, which is heartbreaking as a trainer.
I remember that, yes.
When you've gone your whole life trying to get there and you think that this one could be the one. So now, once again, kind of hope is renewed. Hopefully April showers lead to May flowers is what the barn is hoping. He's gone fast. He's done well. He backed up his performance last time. Last time he beat 3 Bob Baffert horses when he won the race last time. So he's continuing to dominate out there. But the question will always be, and look, Doug O'Neill's done a great job over the years. Bob Baffert's done a great job over the years, shipping from California, going to Churchill, or in Bob's case, going anywhere. And even, Doug O'Neill, he's had a lot of success in Dubai. Obviously, last year with Hard Rod Charlie, he won the Louisiana Derby. But for the guys that don't ship that much, Richard Mandela, look, the horse is dominating California. I'm sure he's going to run back next in the Santa Anita Derby. Again, doesn't need the points. He's in the Derby now. But what's going to happen when he makes that ship to Kentucky. And then the question really goes, because everybody becomes a workout master, does he ship over a week, 2 weeks early, get a work over the track? Does he ship on top of the race? These are all things that will start kind of formulating now. You got to, as a trainer, especially, look, you're in the catbird seat if you have won one of these 50-point races because your ticket's stamped. You're dancing already. You're in the dance. So now you can start working on the logistics issues, which really goes a long way to just kind of, you can make a plan and move backwards rather than like Emmanuel, you're making your plan for the here and now. How do I get into the Derby? What's that next race? I got to work him back in 10 days, 2 weeks. He's got to have a good work. He's got to have this. He's got to have that. Where with the other horse, you can miss a work. If we're not 100% tied
Sure.
up and geared up for the San Antonio Derby, so long as our best effort is on May 7th, well, that's all we care about. And so it's just a little bit of a different mindset. It's a good position to be in. Look, Forbidden Kingdom, the son of of American Pharaoh. We know how good American Pharaoh was. He won the Triple Crown. Can he follow in his father's footsteps? We'll find out here shortly. But
what was really impressive too is the fact that the distance. I mean, the horse hadn't gone further than 7 furlongs before, so it's almost like the early part of it. I mean, you could think if you already obviously you knew the race, you knew the horse's resume beforehand. And that would have been one of the first things that you could have been thinking about is, I like him a lot, but you don't know about the distance. And so when he gets out to that big lead, you're probably thinking, uh-oh, is he going too fast for this? I mean, can he last? We don't know. And he did. And that has to be even equally impressive that he hadn't gone that distance before and he was able to win as convincingly as he did.
I think the thing is with him, he was just doing it so comfortably.
Yes.
Just watching the race, I mean, he was in front by a lot, but it wasn't like he was being asked to do it. He wasn't being pushed to do it. That was just kind of natural speed, which is what you like to see from these young horses. But now you sit there and you go, like when I was sitting here putting together our list for the week, I said, yeah, Forbidden Kingdom, really nice horse. Epicenter, really nice horse. Classic Causeway, really nice horse, amongst others. But wait a second. They've all won their races in gate to wire fashion. What's going to happen in the Derby where the rubber meets the road?
Yeah.
Who makes the lead? Who doesn't make the lead? Do they ding dong each other and then it sets up for somebody who makes the first run, somebody who's a deep closer? Look, obviously we're not handicapping the Kentucky Derby right now, but to me, the Derby poll isn't about, I just want to throw 10 random horses at you. These are the 10 most likely win, in my opinion, right? The 10 most likely winners of the Kentucky Derby if it were run tomorrow, right?
And we still have big races left.
A ton of big races left. We're going to see this weekend the Tampa Bay Derby, which is going to have a couple of horses on our list. And, a lot of things, a lot of questions that'll be answered over there down in Oldsmar, Florida on Saturday. But to me, and you know what? There's another race that everybody has to watch on Saturday. I believe it's the 4th race at Oaklawn. Okay? There's a horse for Windstar Farm who's trained by Rudolph Brissett, who's run one time, and he won like a good thing. His name is We the People, okay? And he's a son of Constitution. He's running, I believe, an allowance race, the 4th race over there, and then we'll probably see him back in the Arkansas Derby. We the People, Rudolph Brissett has told others, is the best horse he's ever had in his life. Now, look, a lot of people don't know Rudolph Brissett. They might not know that he's trained on his own for a little while. They might not even know that he worked for Bill Mott and worked with a ton of good horses for Bill Mott, Taurus, Ron the Greek, the list goes on and on. But people might not know Rudolph Brissett was the trainer of Justified before it went to Bob Baffert. So here's a guy who's worked with a Triple Crown winner already and is sitting there pumping up his chest before the horse ever ran, saying that We the People, the best horse I've ever had. Backed it up, ran a mile first time out at Oaklawn. Not easy to do. Especially they had a lot of missed days of training due to weather and everything else. Very interested to see what happens with We the People over here on Saturday. So it's not a Derby. It's not a Derby.
So it's Oaklawn. Oaklawn on Saturday.
Oaklawn on Saturday. We're going to see We the People. He's a horse.
But is he going to be a heavy favorite?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But they always say that a short price is better than a long face any day.
How old is the horse?
3.
Oh, it's okay. So this is another horse that has a chance.
he's 10A with Emmanuel in
Okay.
our Derby
Got
poll.
it.
So we have to see what he moves. And look, if he runs the way that I think he can run on Saturday, it can change people's perspectives of right now. Hey, the Arkansas Derby is a bad race. Un Ojo, right? The one-eyed New York bred
Yes. Don't
is the
remind
horse to
me.
beat in there. So all of a sudden, there's a lot of trainers sitting there saying, maybe I want to go to Arkansas. After We the People runs, if he were to dominate on Saturday, you might see people changing their tune and
Yeah.
maybe not wanting to go to the Arkansas Derby. Look, it's 1.25 million. People are still going to come.
Sure.
But it might change some dynamics. So we got to keep an eye on that on Saturday, along with watching the Tampa Bay Derby in Oldsmar, Florida.
And speaking of me getting beat again at the wire, it happened again. I had an Italian in the race on which one?
That's a winner.
Yeah, but I had, the horse was 8-1, and I loved the sheets, and I said, you know what, I think this horse. The only thing I'm afraid of is I can't believe this horse is going to go 8-1. But if I can still get it 4-1, 5-1, I'm happy. I could not believe that horse went down to about 2-1.
No, the I don't know who's making the morning line at Gulfstream right now, but their morning line and the final prices for these races have not been close. I mean, they're wrong about as much as Andy Sherman up in New York. So hopefully, we get that corrected.
So then I had an exacta which would have paid me my big money with Navratilova. And I figured Navratilova I forget who Navratilova passed, but I was, we passed him. I got this. And all of a sudden, whoosh, comes some other crazy horse to nip me at the wire and take my $2 exacta, which would have paid like $90. And I can't make any money off a 2-1 shot. So Forbidden Kingdom will probably run, it looks like, here in the Santa Anita Derby.
Yeah, Santa Anita Derby.
Okay.
And where he'll take on Messier.
Again, yes. Rematch.
So he'll take on Messier, and the thing with Messier is going to be ... who will be the trainer of Messier on April 2nd? There's no answer right now. Obviously, we haven't really talked about Bob Baffert, but he's attempting to get a stay. The Kentucky Horse Racing
he's not getting a stay.
We're not giving you a stay, but the judge will rule on this on the 17th or 19th. In that situation, his suspension would start on March 22nd. And if his suspension were to start on March 22nd, then this horse would have to be trained by somebody else.
Okay. And look, don't you believe that is it possible that the decisions that a lot of these owners were making with Baffert, because he hasn't had such luck so far, could be playing into that? Like, well, he hasn't won any races yet. Maybe I should tell him all right, maybe I'll let's pass it over to another trainer. And not that they don't trust him, but just because of like luck or something like that. I don't know.
He has earned all the accolades and the trust of everybody. I had that horse, Mind Your Biscuits, who was a really good horse. He made $4.5 million, and if I didn't own a piece of him, I'm sure my partners would have moved the horse to Bob Baffert. Many opportunities anytime we lost the race. So
their decision would have been made up no matter what, whether he's struggling or not.
No, the fact is, there's been a few horses quietly moved to Bill Mott, but other than that, everybody kind of stayed home. We'll see what happens. Hopefully this week, next week, we'll have a little bit of a better idea.
Well, look, it's better for the fans if we can move some of these horses to another trainer.
Well, it's better for the fans if there's just closure on the issue. I think that's the one thing that we want is just closure.
Yeah. Okay, so on your poll, we talked about Forbidden Kingdom. So he's the new buck in your rankings at 7. Simplification is also new. By the way, you moved him all the way up to 4. So that's how impressed you were by Simplification's effort. We talked about Morello's biggest move from 10 to 5. The biggest drop was Emmanuel from 2 to 10.
Yeah, and again, look, I kind of wanted to keep him up a little bit higher, but you're in that kind of
you're in the running. Yep.
you're in the Hail Mary territory now. I mean, it's 4th and 10
Yep.
on the 50. You know you can't settle for a field goal at this point. You know you need the touchdown. So I still believe the horse has a world of ability. But believe it or not, we're not that far out from May 7th. You know we feel like we are. We still got a 50-point race. We have 100-point races coming up, but
Yes.
before we know it, it's going to be the first Saturday in May. And you know the way that it's written, where you have to have these points. If you don't have the points, you're not running the Derby. You can't pay somebody off like
No.
Lori Loughlin to get your kid into college.
No.
Or
Ep-
that crushed me with Aunt Becky. Yes.
yeah, I'm sure. Epicenter is leading right now with 64 points. Again, it's early. Anunjo and Simplification now with 54. Forbidden Kingdom and Morello are next with 50 points each. As you can see there, this is the rest of the board. Then you can find this over on KentuckyDerby.com/horses. Now, by the way, the two horses in your poll that have been knocked out of your rankings were Charge It, 9th, and out. That's understandable. But Rattle and Roll from 3rd to get out of here.
So just disappointment. I was expecting much more from him. I didn't love how he looked physically in the post parade prior to the race. Yeah, maybe he needed the race. Kenny McPeak had kind of said he wasn't cranked up for this one, but I wanted to see a little bit more from him. And with the spill and everything else, I get it. But you know, Kenny's original plan was to run him back in the Louisiana Derby in 2 weeks, going a mile and 3/16. I just needed to see more from him. And the reason that Charger drops out is there's no decision yet on where his next race is going to be. I was kind of hoping it was going to be in the Tampa Bay Derby. Maybe it still will be. I think we draw for that tomorrow. But the fact that Todd's kind of keeping his cards close to the vest on Charge It makes me feel like, you know, he might not be as higher ranking as some of these other ones.
Okay.
Where he's kind of made definitive plans for. And so with that in mind, until we know where Charge It's running, we got to kind of keep him off the list. Now that can change this week. Look, Golden Glider is a horse that we're giving that one more shot to. We're giving him the mulligan from last time, you know, hoping that he's going to get a better trip this time in the Tampa Bay Derby. But if he's not 1-2, obviously he'll drop off the list next week, as will Classic Causeway.
Who do you think we're going to see in the Tampa Bay Derby that's on your list?
We're going to see Classic Causeway. We're going to see Golden Glider.
Okay.
We'll see the New York bred that was second for Eddie Barker, as New York breds continue to do well in these open races. Obviously, with Un Ojo, Vente Valentine, New York bred won the Busher. So New York breds, they're certainly competing for the biggest prizes, and no reason to think that Eddie Barker can't be tough in the Tampa Derby as well.
And I should remind everybody that Cyberknife holds on to the top spot.
Yeah.
No reason he shouldn't.
He's gonna have to prove it whenever he runs.
We
next
still don't
time.
know.
No, nobody knows where it's one of those you spin the wheel, where it stops. Nobody knows.
Well, the schedule. Let's see. You mentioned this Tampa Bay Derby. That's 50 points. That's the last big Derby prep race that has just 50 points. The other big ones then follow 2 weeks later, and of course that's when you take your trip to Dubai for the UAE Derby on the 26th. That's for 100 points, and the Louisiana Derby is also for 100 points the same weekend, and then the next weekend, of course, is the big one in April. So this is it. 50 points in the Tampa Bay Derby, and then the 100-point races in a couple weeks.
Yeah,
and that's when you know it's getting serious. By the way, John just texted me because he didn't realize I was on the air with you, and he said he was asking about if we talked about his horse, because he said he blames you for the horse being stuck there. I'm just kidding.
It sounds about right.
By the way, in those situations, is it different who the owner is when you like is that something where you would normally go to your owner and say, all right, this is what I'm thinking? Is that all depending on the owner?
I think it's all kind of collective decisions. Look, I always equate being a trainer to being a general manager, right? The final decision is going to go with the owner. The George Steinbrenner, it was the owner, right? If George Steinbrenner wanted, you know, Derek Jeter to play first base, then Derek Jeter was going to play first base.
Sure.
Whether Joe Torre wanted him to, whether Brian Cashman wanted him to, it didn't matter. If George Steinbrenner wanted that, that's what he was going to get. So my job, aside from I'm training these horses, conditioning them. You know, I have a great staff and people around me that work with me as far as riders and grooms and hot walkers that take care of the horses. But ultimately, my job is to lay out the facts and lay out the options to the owner, and then say, "This is where we're at. I can give my 2 cents. This is what I'd like to do." But ultimately, what the owner wants to do is what we'll do. And so, if for example that horse, Champagne Poetry, we still have the option to ship in tomorrow and run in the race. It's $100,000, right? I think first prize will be about $58,000 to the winner. That's a lot of money to the owner. But then you're there for 2 weeks. Who you leaving the horse with? What are your options? And so there's so many mitigating circumstances.
Sure.
And all I can do is just kind of lay it out down the line. And while we sit here and we look, our goal, whether it be a long shot or not, right? Until they say we can't run in the Kentucky Oaks, we have a filly who's on the Oaks Trail.
Yeah.
And so being there and being stuck there for 2 weeks would have taken us, I feel like, out of any opportunity to try and make the Oaks.
Sure.
Whereas this way, we stay home, we train a little bit more, get a little bit more time off the last race, and we'll swing our shot, in the Bourbonette, 250,000, 50 points to the winner. If we win that race, we're in the Kentucky Oaks. And look, if you have a filly that's a 3-year-old, the Oaks is our Derby, right?
Absolutely.
So we're going to do what we can to try and make the starting gate in the Oaks. And until they say we can't, if it's the first Sunday in May, maybe we would have run in this race. But unfortunately, we're still in March, and we're going to keep the dream alive.
Well, there's a dream, there's fate. You never know what card you're going to be dealt, and it just all depends. And so we'll find out whether or not this is actually a good thing or not. And you just got to keep the faith, obviously. But so last thing, give me a percentage of the owners who are not as educated, like they're more. I'm owning the horses because I think it's fun. I want to, I'd like to have a horse win races, whatever. You can come to me, but I'm not really going to make the decision. You're the guy. You know what you're doing. How many percentage of those owners are out there?
So when they buy their first horse, 95% of them.
Yeah.
When they win their first race,
now
they're
5% experts. Of it. Yeah.
Then everybody becomes an expert. They have the condition book printed online before you have a chance to even look at it. And it's out for 20 minutes. And hey, where are we running? When are we running back? It's like in the media, you just cross the wire, and the first question from anybody, where's next? Well, can I enjoy this one for half a second?
Right.
And I just let me breathe. Let me just digest this race. Where's next? Where's next? That's always the topic of conversation. What's next?
Yeah.
And if we don't tell them, then Twitter will tell them for us. So it's okay.
All right, Chad. Great job as always. Next week means we're getting that much closer to Derby time, and then you travel. So
yes, sir.
We got one more show before you travel. Is that correct?
Yeah, and then we'll see if we can do a show live from Dubai. We're going to take this show international.
Oh, we're going to devise a cool little strategy there. Can't wait. We should. It'd be nice since you're overseas and everything. It'd be nice if you could actually, I don't know. Maybe is there a way to hook up like some sort of visual outdoors so we can actually see that you're there? Because you could say you're there, but we don't know. Unless you actually look, I see something that says Dubai in the background, and there's got lights, and it's
You want me to do the podcast live next to a camel?
That might work.
When I was there last year, this is a funny story, and I'll let you go on this. So when I was there last year, I was interviewing a guy who's one of the leading trainers over there, named Salim bin Gadea, and he's legally blind, and he ran second. He almost ran in the Kentucky Derby last year with a horse named Panadol. So I went there and I spent like 3 or 4 hours with him. He kind of let me into his whole operation, had a sit down interview with him, had a camera guy, everything. And so they have like a miniature zoo over there because he trains for the Crown Prince, who is Sheikh Mohammed's son, named Sheikh Hamdan. And we were over there, and he takes me to this zoo area. And in the zoo area, he has elephants, he has giraffes, he has elephants, he has some other animals. And so I got a chance to play soccer with an elephant and then feed it an apple, which I thought was amazing. And I had told my camera guy, I said, "Did you get that on the air?" He goes, "Once you've seen one dancing elephant, you've seen them all. I didn't record it." And I go, "You've got to be kidding me." So you never know what you're going to find in Dubai.
Oh boy, fire him. Did he come with you?
No, he was a local from over there. We picked him up
figures.
over there.
Yeah. All right, Chad. Thanks as always. We'll talk to you again next Monday.
You got it. Have a good one, Greg.